How do you create something from nothing? This is a wonderful episode where we're going to be talking with Michael Santos, who spent 26 years in prison, incarcerated, came out, is now a multi-millionaire, has several degrees, and is someone who's making a big, deep impact. And the tips and tricks he shares with us about creating a powerful mindset is something all of us can apply here at Thriving Launch. Welcome to Thriving Launch with Louise Congdon and Kamala Chambers. This show for heart-centered entrepreneurs who want it all.
5 days a week, we bring you different segments to inspire you to live a life of freedom. We interview the leading experts in the field of business, health, and love. Be sure to check out Training Tuesdays, where we give you a clear action plan to grow your own business. Maybe you can relate to this. When I was a full-time coach, keep repeating the same things to people over and over and over again, and it got to be kind of draining, and I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing anymore. So what I decided to do was record the things that I had to tell clients over and over and over again, and then I packaged those recordings together and sold them as an online course. If you're interested in creating and selling your own online course, head over to thrivinglaunch.com, and I have a free training for you on how to create and make passive income through your own online course. Today's guest is an author and a successful business owner, Michael Santos. He emerged after 26 consecutive years in prison of every security level. Now he teaches others how to overcome struggles and prepare their lives for more success.
All right, Thriving Launchers, we're here with Michael Santos. It's my privilege and honor to bring on someone who I consider a friend, someone that I really admire. Anyways, without further ado, are you ready to launch, Michael?
Let's rocket ship off.
Awesome. Well, it's really great to have you here. I mean, you've really gone through, you have an incredible story of taking adversity and being really knocked down and owning up to your creations and then creating something when you kind of had everything pulled away from you. And, you know, as you said in your book, you did this to yourself and you found a way to still take responsibility and then create something from nothing. So I'd really like to start. I mean, Thriving Launchers, today we want to talk about how to take life when you don't really have anything going for you and still create something like Michael has. But I want to start by talking a little bit about Michael's story, because you guys may already know Michael Santos and that he went to prison for 26 years. He spent his 20s and 30s in prison. So, Michael, what is one of the biggest lessons that you pulled out of spending 26 years incarcerated?
The biggest lesson, Luis, first of all, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to contribute to the Thriving Launch program. I think that you guys are doing awesome work. And I know that a lot of your listeners are aspiring entrepreneurs, people who want to build great businesses. And the one lesson I think that translates from my life to anybody's life is that regardless of where we are today, we can always take steps to begin building a better tomorrow. In my case, I started inside of I got that message when I was at the long end of a lengthy prison term. I had no idea what it was going to be like, but I did know that I was going to emerge successfully. And it all begins with a vision, setting a plan, and then executing that plan every single day.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about the nothing, because we're going to talk about creating something out of nothing. But where was it for you? What was it like for you? I know it was a long time that you were incarcerated, but what was it like for you to really have nothing while you're locked up and start to reach out for a bigger dream?
Yeah, I think we've got to put that nothing into context. Certainly, I was locked inside of a cell. I only had what was, in my immediate environment, which were 4 concrete walls, a concrete rack, guards passing me food through a slot in a door, a lack of liberty. But what I did have, Kamala, was hope. I always had a vision of how I was going to emerge from this journey. I knew I'd made some very bad decisions during the recklessness of youth. I was 20 years old when I began trafficking in cocaine. And when my judge sentenced me to 45 years in federal prison, I didn't have any idea what it meant. but I did know how I was going to emerge from that. And I had a vision that I would come back to society, be able to put on a suit and tie, walk into any audience, and nobody would know that I served a day in prison unless I told them. That was the vision that guided me through the prison journey. Then I had to create a plan. And that was, how was I going to convert the nothingness that some people would describe, which is lack of liberty and all material possessions, and turn that into a life of abundance. And I created a plan that would help me get there. And my plan was really to be thinking about people like you and people in your audience. And that's really just taking myself outside of my own problems and start thinking about, well, what would law-abiding, contributing citizens expect from me? That's what gave me the plan. And that plan was to focus on educating myself, focus on contributing to society, and focus on building a support network. And if I could do that, if I could execute that plan, as the days turn into weeks and the weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and the years turn into decades, I believe that I would land on my feet and come back strong. And that's what carried me through 26 calendar years in federal prison.
So one of the first things that I really got from your story is that you created a plan. You built somewhat of a schedule for yourself, and you created a vision to really support the desire to execute, even though you were in a place that, from my perspective, prison appears, and just from for the past few weeks, I've actually been watching a television show about prisons, and it just seems like a place where dreams are constantly being crushed, and the people around you are not typically people who are visionaries. Most of them tend to be people who are like, I've been here, my father's been here, my father's father, this is what we do, I'm going to come back, there's no hope, or I'm going to stay here for the rest of my life, so whatever, life is meaningless. So you're around a lot of people that don't have a lot of hope, and then the prison itself is kind of made as a place to kind of squash or to kind of compress you. So it's very hard for you to grow. And I'm curious, how do you grow a vision during that time and then create a schedule for yourself, which is something that I think a lot of us can really benefit from hearing from your perspective, because we have the freedoms that you didn't. And yet most of us are still not creating that kind of vision or goal.
I don't know that it's so different, Luis. I'll tell you, there are a lot of entrepreneurs, business people, salespeople out here that I meet that strike me as they're in a bit of a prison themselves, where they too are facing rejection consistently, whether they're trying to raise funding, whether they're trying to get a new account, whether they're trying to overcome the struggle of figuring out how to create a new product. Many times that can be like a prison, and it can stop somebody from moving forward. And you're absolutely right that we need to have a schedule, because it's all just about work. It's about creating a methodical plan that's going to get us through. And what worked for me was writing it out, my values and my goals, and having an understanding of how my goals had to authenticate my commitment to those values. So it was those two steps of articulating the values by which I want to live, the goals that I want to achieve. Those were like the prerequisites that would allow me to create these types of accountability metrics. Because if I knew how I wanted to emerge from prison, if that was my vision, then I knew how much time I had to get there. Now, in my case, there was a lot of time. So a lot of time spanning. I mean, I couldn't comprehend what it would mean to serve 26 years in prison. I had a 45-year sentence, but as long as I avoided disciplinary infractions in prison, I knew I could satisfy it in 26 years. But remember, I was only 23 years old when I went in. So I didn't have any frame of reference of what it meant to serve 26 years inside of that box. So I distilled it down to 10 years. What am I going to achieve in 10 years? And because I knew that within 10 years, I wanted to have my first university degree, I wanted to publish something, and I wanted to find 10 people to become a part of my support network. And if I could do that, that I believe would catapult me to new goals. So because I knew where I wanted to be in 10 years, I could just reverse engineer it and say, okay, where do I have to be in 5? What do I have to do next year within this first year to get there in 5 years? If I know what I have to do next year, what do I have to do next month, in the next 6 months, in the next 3 months, the next 1 month? And what do I have to do tomorrow? And that's what helped me create these accountability logs that kept me on the path, always working toward the vision that I had of emerging successfully.
Michael, one of the things I'm really curious about is prison. To me, strikes me as a place where not a lot of really wholesome people tend to be at. Not a lot of people who have the kind of vision that you're creating or a desire. I think a lot of the people do have incredible desires, actually, and maybe they're incredibly judged by society and because of not only their doings, but kind of familial inheritance, the roots that they come from. They've inherited a certain way of being and a certain way of being maybe even judged by society, and they've ended up in this place. But that still doesn't, it's still kind of, I guess for me, I wonder, how did you create for yourself the mindset to say, I'm not going to be like most of the people here. I'm going to be something different. And then how did you put your mind to it, to every day focus towards that achievement, despite the fact that a lot of the people around you were not trying to achieve the same thing? I know that I flourish more when I tend to put myself in spaces where everyone else around me, I might not be the smartest guy in the room. And then what happens is I become way more educated because of it. I might be the last guy in the race, but because everyone else is running faster than me, I tend to run even faster than I've ever done before. But the challenge that you have is you're trying to be, in many ways, your own leader.
Well, where I found leadership was in reading. I would read stories of successful people, and I would strive to emulate the characteristics that they had. And that doesn't stop in prison. I still do that today. Now that I don't have as much time to read, when I was in prison, I would read incessantly. And I had a very methodical way of reading, where every time I'd read a book, I would I would force myself to write a book report. And the book report would basically answer 3 questions. First, the first segment of the book report would talk about, why did I read this book? So it would force me to read in a deliberate manner, to make sure I'm reading books that have a very clear relationship to what I want to become. Then the second question I would ask of every book report was, what did I learn from reading this book? And it would force me to really write out specifically what were the takeaways that I got from this story. And then finally, I would write an answer to this question, which was, how did reading this book, how will having read this book contribute to my success upon release? And that methodical step resulted in me accumulating hundreds of these book reports, and that I could later use those book reports as currency when I was trying to make a sale on why other people should believe in me, because I could show them, look, it's not all about happy talk. It's about efforts. And this is who I have learned from. And this is tangible evidence that you can see I have learned from these people. And this is how I am going to apply these principles to my life. And as I said, it not only got me through prison, it got me onto success when I got out of prison. I had the same passion to succeed when I got out of prison. And I distinctly remember leaving prison and telling my wife, I said, within 5 years, I'll control more than $1 million worth of assets and build from there. And it was those same principles that took me from getting out of prison with nothing and building successful ventures that could sustain my family and allow me to contribute positively to the world and to the people I care about.
I would love to hear from you. What is one tip that you would give for people who maybe they don't have a lot going on right now, or they feel like they don't have a lot going on and they want to get to the next level of success? What's something that you would tell them that they could start doing right away?
Great question. I just recently read this book about Elon Musk. Well, I should say I listened to it. I listened to books while I'm running. And Elon Musk, these are principles of success. And I would have honed on this when I was in prison. I still do it today. But one of the things that Elon Musk did when he came to America, he actually started in Canada, in America, and he wrote about when he got into college, one of the things that he and his brother did was they would write letters to, 50 of the people that they most wanted to meet, and just explain to them why they admired them, what they would like to learn from them, and just ask for an opportunity for a 15 or a 20-minute meeting. And that's the same thing that I did in prison. I had to find mentors and bring them into my life. I'd have to write to people I didn't know, persuade them why their knowledge was so valuable to me, and then ask them for some one-on-one time, whether it was through a letter or through a phone call or through a visit, as Elon Musk did. Well, that catapulted Elon Musk into building several ventures that have gone on to change the world. It changed my life in prison. And if somebody is going through this challenge in their life right now, I would urge them, reach out to people that inspire them. I mean, I know your stories, and it's very inspiring because you sound as if, from what I've read about both of you, you've both have had that type of a challenge where you've been stuck in a difficult situation, but yet you found a way to overcome. I think there's enormous value in listening to Thriving Launch and listening to your story because people can learn from you.
I really love that tip that you just gave, and it's something that I utilized when I was homeless at one point in my life in my late 20s. I was trying to find a way to turn my life around, and I knew that I couldn't be employed anymore, that for me, having to clock into someone else's clock and having to live by someone else's rules, in the sense that I had to, enter this small world, enter this building, and be confined to essentially building someone else's dream, or at least being within the confines of how they viewed that dream to be okay for me to help them build it, was very difficult for me. And then I ended up becoming homeless and was very lost, and I got very down on myself. And then I created a plan because someone suggested to me, you should start interviewing people who you admire and who have achieved what you've achieved. And that's how podcasting started for me. So I think that's a great tip that you have there. And I think that everybody should do that. I think it's a very brilliant, and podcasting is one of the ways that I've taken that tip that you've talked about and utilized in my own life, and it changed things dramatically. One of the things I want to ask you now is, you have this turning point that I think is really incredible, especially for you guys thriving launchers to hear about, because I really believe, and it's something that Dr. Venus in one of our last interviews, she talked about as well, is taking your pain and turning that pain into a product, turning it into a course, turning that pain as something that can be a gift and a form of alchemy, to take that pain and then turn it into something that can help other people and help them get through it faster. And one of the things that I know that you've done through your podcast, and now you have products and you have books and you're working with judges and all sorts of government officials, and you're trying to help transform the prison system and give courses that help people who are incarcerated to have the kind of turnaround that you had. And I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Well, for me, as I said, I got out of prison and I knew that I had a couple of challenges to face. I was 49 years old when I finished my prison sentence. I knew that, that's only 11 years away till you're 60. And I came out to society with a 000 credit score. So I knew I would have to build and accelerate success. So I told my wife I was going to focus on my career, but at the same time, I wanted to create products and services that would help people in prison emerge successfully. And so I took the same pathway. One of the things I say is I never ask anybody to do anything that I didn't do and that I'm not still doing. So I documented the effort. And then I put it into a package, so to speak, that would describe how this methodical step of articulating values, setting clear goals, and then once you've done those two things, following a principled path. And my course, it's called the Straight A Guide. So I talk about the importance of having the right attitude, the importance of having an aspiration, the importance of taking action, holding yourself accountable, becoming aware, celebrating every achievement, and then expressing appreciation by sowing the seeds so that others could do the same thing. And that's what makes you authentic. That's basically, in a nutshell, the course that I teach. So I had to create it in a digital manner. So what do you do next? Well, that means I have to learn how to use Adobe products like InDesign so I can create courses. Then I had to learn, I learned a lot from you and your wonderful programs, how to podcast. So I would record stories of other people who emerged successfully. And then I would use those as sales tools that I would go to government officials and I would be able to point it to them, and they could tune into iTunes if they wanted to and listen to any of several hundred interviews I did with people who emerged successfully. And I just made the case. If you present these stories to people in prison, more people are going to have the hope. And if they have the hope, they can find the way themselves and recognize how the decisions they are making today have a direct influence on their prospects for success tomorrow.
One of the really amazing things to hear about you is how you utilize the internet when you came out and didn't really know too much about it. And you would message me and say, hey, Luis, do you have a few minutes? Can you teach me how to do this or that? And I know you were doing that with all sorts of people to really educate yourself. So you came out very empowered and very proactive in asking for help and support. That's something that I constantly preach. If you guys follow me on Facebook or my emails, that's something that I talk about a lot, is proactively ask for support and utilize your community. That's something that you did. And then one of the other things that you've done too as well is you've really educated yourself. You've really surrounded yourself with really successful people. And a huge win, something that I watched you go through, it was really amazing, is take your podcast, and now it's something that people in prison, in some prisons, that they actually syndicate in the prisons and people can listen to. I was on your show, and I know that episode went out to some of the prisons that you work with. And it's just really amazing to hear the work that you're doing and that you created when you had nothing. You've created something that is now of real value and real wealth and giving a lot to the world.
Yeah, and then I love to go into the prisons. Like last week, I was inside of a prison in Victorville, California, and had an opportunity to influence. You know, you're talking to 1,000 people who are living without hope, but just by the virtue of having gone through it and share these stories with people, you can see their eyes light up and see them start seeing possibilities for themselves for success, not only when they come home from prison, but while they're in prison as well. And that's very fulfilling.
We've been here with Michael Santos talking about how to go from zero nothingness to success. It's been so fantastic. All the tips that Michael has shared are things that we can go out and apply right away. I just encourage you to take this all into your hearts today and look at the ways that you can achieve greater success in your life. Thank you so much for tuning in, and keep thriving. You've been listening to the Thriving Launch podcast. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure to head over to thrivinglaunch.com. We'll see you there. Be sure to check out the next episode where we talk with Steve Olsher about how to find that one thing that you were born to do. And if you've enjoyed this episode, make sure that you're subscribed on iTunes and that you've left us a 5-star rating if you feel like it.